I guess a couple other ones would be incorporating post-consumer recycled content, um, which is a very exciting thing to be able to do. When you look at a life cycle analysis, really trying to understand, kind of more cradle to cradle versus cradle to grave, what impact does a package have when you're able to reduce the use of virgin resin and replace that with plastic resin that's already been used, post-consumer recycled content. It really drops a lot of the metrics that you would measure in an LCA. So better for greenhouse gases, better things along that front.
Welcome to the Pet Food Science Podcast, where we seek to discuss current research and how we can think of applying new findings to innovate in the pet food industry and support the health and well-being of our dogs and cats. I'm your host, Anna Kate Shoveler, and I'm here today with Ben Davis from ProAmpac. Ben leads the product management team and is the pet market manager at ProAmpac. He is based in Cincinnati, Ohio. He has been with the company for 12 years, serving in various innovation and product development roles prior to joining the marketing team. He is responsible for the continued growth and strategic direction of pre-made pouches and large format paper, film, and woven bags. Ben holds a BS in chemical engineering from Purdue University and an MBA from Miami University. He's been in the flexible packaging industry for 18 years and holds multiple U.S. patents. Welcome, Ben.
Hi, Kate. Well, good to be here.
Well, I thought maybe we could start with you providing a little bit of a description to listeners about the products and services that ProAmpac provides to the pet food industry.
Sure. So ProAmpac is one of the largest U.S.-based flexible packaging companies. We provide a variety of packaging across many markets. A very, very important market to us is the pet food market. One of the ways that we differentiate within that market is the variety of different products that we can produce for different applications within pet food. So from roll stock and small pouches for dry and wet food up to larger quad bag pouches with either flat bottoms or not. To multi-wall paper packaging, and finally in woven polypropylene packaging.
ProAmpac, your companion in pet packaging. Visit pets.proampac.com to explore our innovative sustainable solutions, such as our QuadFlex recyclable flat bottom bags, ProDura polywoven bags, ProEvo recyclable paper bags with grease resistance, and our ProActive recyclable film and pouches that run at optimum speeds on your filling equipment. Elevate your wet food, treats, and kibble brand by utilizing packaging that safeguards and preserves product freshness. Trust ProAmpac for packaging that cares for your pets and the planet. pets.proampac.com.
Excellent. And we're very clearly going to get a little bit further into these packages because packaging is an important part of protecting the product quality. So I was hoping that maybe we could start there. If you are advising the pet food industry on packaging, and let's start I will go through all the different kinds of products that are in the pet food industry, but given that extruded food tends to dominate our sales, what is available for companies that are predominantly extruded kibble?
So a lot of that has to do with the size and the use occasion that you're going to look for that product. So from smaller package sizes, which might be in a quad bag, a flat bottom quad looks very nice on the shelf, up to the larger format bags, which could be a multi-wall pinch bottom open mouth bag, or more and more of those are transferring these days to polywoven bags or woven polypropylene bags. But they'll provide very good durability, good branding on the outside, and good product protection to get the product all the way from the factory where you're making it all the way to the end user, which is our beloved pets.
Absolutely. And how does that packaging change when we go down to? I think you also do the pouches, right, for semi-wet or semi-moist.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Sure. So different applications for sure. And so different processing is happening inside the package. So for a wet pet food inside a pouch, you're filling the product prior to cooking it, and it's actually cooking inside the pouch to reach that commercial sterility. So it stays shelf stable. So that's that side of it versus a dry application where, you're filling the pouch. There's really no processing afterwards. Just a little bit different constructions and different uses for the packaging.
Okay. And you mentioned this advancement towards, I think you called it woven. Is this correct?
Woven polypropylene or polywoven bags. This is a format that's been around for a long time. There has been in the pet market in the last several years a transition from multi-wall paper, so like larger format pinch bags, towards these polywoven bags. And further, from bags with a sewn closure to a thermal weld or a closure that doesn't have that sewn tape when the package is just welded to itself for the closure. Gives it a very nice shelf presence and also really helps with any potential concerns for infestation or anything like that.
Oh, interesting. Okay. And what is the price differential in these? So back in the day, I'm a little bit older than I think probably some of our professional listeners are going to be, but I quite well remember almost all of our dog food coming in multi-layered paper at the time. And I often there'd often be a rip and a tear. They're not very durable. And I can see how that would not be good for the product. However, I imagine that is a much cheaper bag. Is this correct assumption?
I have to say it depends, for sure. There have been changes in the way paper bags or the paper packaging needs to be. A lot of those packages historically contained PFAS chemicals, for example, for grease resistance. And a lot of these products do have some grease to them. And in the last couple of years, regulations have eliminated the ability to use those, which is great for pets, great for things where we're trying to keep these forever chemicals out. But it's created some challenges in terms of how you attain that level of grease resistance without it. So some of the solutions there are more costly than the prior versions had been. So I'll stick with, it depends on, the formats exactly, the sizes and the paper construction versus the woven construction. But
okay, you brought up something I'm going to address a little bit later, which is I am not aware of packaging regulations, so I think we should probably touch on that later in the podcast. But when we come back to the options for extruded kibble or wet in pouch, if you wanted to be, and I'm going to throw a couple questions here. If you wanted the least expensive, what do you go with?
Again, I'm going to say it
depends.
I'm going to stick with it. With it depends. Yeah. For the wet pouch, there's a little bit of it's a bit more limited options because the pouch has to really do specific things in terms of survive the processing, in terms of maintaining barrier, that shelf stable. So, there's a smaller range there.
And for extruded, what's the range there? Is there a range in price that companies can consider?
Again, I would say it's. I'm going to leave it with it. It depends, and let's talk about what you're looking to do.
Yes, because my next question. So I always start with price because we have a very wide range of price points within the pet food industry, but then we have a lot of emerging requests. So one of those would be for packaging that is the most environmentally sustainable, and in that case, how do you advise your customers?
So sustainability is a huge thing right now in flexible packaging, and it's a key point of investment, and we believe differentiation within ProAmpac. What we find from our spot in the value chain is a lot of our customers have different product portfolios from the packaging that they're using, and also different definitions of, kind of what sustainability means to them. So, for example, some companies might want to push towards a plastic bag that's or pouch that's all one material, so a monomaterial bag that could potentially be recycled through the in-store recycling program in the United States. That's one way to do it. Other companies might want to, move away from there towards paper, which there's been a lot of transition from paper recently, but there's potentially some moving back towards it because paper can be recycled in your curbside bin. And again, I'm focusing kind of on the U.S. right here, but it's much doing the recycling is much more accessible, and it's also fiber-based trees. So some people perceive that as more natural as well. So our goal is to try to figure out, or to try to have options rather. And so we have options around recyclable, containing post-consumer recycled content, being recycle ready. So it's ready to recycle, even though there might not be a stream for it yet, compostable, and renewable. So whether that's fiber-based or a plastic that's based from plants.
Well, interesting. I didn't realize that you had a compostable option as well, and you can take the client towards that area. Can you tell me a little bit more, just because I'm intrigued, mainly on an engineering basis, how you can make a package perform all these options while being compostable? Can you help me? That seems almost non-agreeable to me.
Sure. So there's areas where that can be a fit, and there's areas where it doesn't. It's not a fit. Compostable is an interesting one, and it's probably one of the ones that we see less interest versus like post-consumer recycled content containing or recyclable. Mm-hmm. But there are areas where it can be a fit, like for example, the tea market, or products where there's going to be a lot of residue, food residue inside the package. Most compostable packaging currently is industrial compostable. There are some that are home compostable, but they compost at different conditions and over different periods of time. Or I guess the current state of things right now, there's a bit limited, and some of it's geographically, options for industrial composting sites. So again, for some products and for some brands, it's a great fit, and for other ones, it can be a more challenging fit. I'll also say for some markets overall, like pet food, it could be more of a challenging approach at sustainability versus like adding post-consumer recycled content.
Okay.
So not to say it can't be done, and you bring up some very good points that sometimes, if the pouch or the package is going to be compostable, how do you get it through its normal life cycle first? That's important, but many of them are designed for industrial compostable, so it is more durable and long lasting in normal conditions.
And silly question, because I don't even think I understood that there was two different ways of composting, but industrial takes longer.
Industrial tends to be done at higher temperature conditions. So there's different standards that a package needs to hit in terms of how it degrades. And so there's a standard for home compostability, and there's a standard for industrial compostability. So it's all standardized out there. I don't have all the details specifically off the tip of my tongue here, but it's very real, very regulated, and there's neat materials that can do that. Again, probably less of a fit in pet food potentially versus other markets.
Yeah, it also sheds light onto why our leaves in paper bags are picked up separately from compost from the household end. Obviously, they're going to two different sites. So I always wondered why that happened. And now I think you provided me with some insight. So continuing along the sustainability line, when we think about the materials used for these different packages, is there a sustainability component to the incoming materials as well that you consider along with the pet food companies that you work with?
For the packaging material?
Yes.
Yes. So for I guess for the history of flexible packaging, flexible packaging really addresses the first R in the reduce, reuse, recycle. It's reduce. You're taking a certain amount of product and you're putting it in a very, very thin, very light package. So really trying to maximize that product to package ratio. So historically, that's been done by using either multi-layer laminates or different, like on the multi-wall paper side, with plies of paper and then usually a film on the inside for different properties. And the idea is minimize how much of that you're using. So while that's all well and good, recently, as sustainability becomes more and more important, as more brands make commitments for it, or in that direction, um, the that's become not really good enough, because even though there's not very much packaging there, there's still, I mean, when you aggregate it over everything that gets purchased, there's still a lot, and it's not recyclable currently as these multi-materials. So what we're doing, and other companies in our spot in the value chain are doing, is figuring out, okay, well, what materials can we use that we can go to, I'll call it a mono material, but use the same basic material throughout the entire package, to enable it to be recycled. So polyethylene, for example, is a good example of a material that people are working towards, and that we have strong solutions for. The nice thing about polyethylene is once you use the package, under in certain applications, and there's some regulations around that too. If it's dry and clean, you can take it back to an in-store drop-off location, like a lot of grocery stores in the U.S. have them, and they'll recycle that, and be able to use it again for another, oftentimes a more durable plastic application.
Interesting. Okay, so did I miss a section of sustainability here? We had the incoming, I would have said ingredients, but the incoming components of the packaging.
Sure.
We have the post-recycling opportunities. Is there another component of sustainability, or have we hit the two key factors?
I guess a couple other ones would be incorporating post-consumer recycled content, which is a very exciting thing to be able to do. When you look at a life cycle analysis, really trying to understand, kind of more cradle to cradle versus cradle to grave, what impact does a package have when you're able to reduce the use of virgin resin, and replace that with, plastic resin that's already been used, post-consumer recycled content. It really drops a lot of the metrics that you would measure in an LCA. So better for greenhouse gases, better things along that front. The other piece that I would say is, in terms of how the operations run. So there's other things related to sustainability, about waste reduction, about how you're powering the facilities that are running them, whether it's through traditional electricity means or renewable. There's different things like that. Also, how your sites are managing their water usage and water reclamation, things like that. So lots of different areas that play into what we all just kind of lump together as sustainability.
Absolutely. It's so multi-pronged, with so many different experts needed to really maximize the opportunities. I can understand the monstrous mountain in front of you as you achieve those goals.
Well, I think it's in front of all of us, really. I mean, we're one. The package is one important, or one part, but there's a number of other important parts, and we're all, we all have to work together to be able to, reach these goals.
Absolutely, and they're quite aggressive goals, at least in North America, in terms of our reductions. So when we think about the then application of these products, we understand their sustainability. Now let's talk a little bit about maybe some of the considerations that you discuss with consumers, customers, when they want to they're talking to you about different types of products. So you might look at extruded as one example, where I think probably what would impact the packaging the most is the level of fat that the kibble comes in at, because that changes the consistency of the kibble. Are there other considerations? What are those? What are those conversations that you're having with different pet food companies about the food and how the food differs going into the package, as I'm pretty sure that your end goal is to maintain shelf stability to the best level that you can? What are some of the levers that you can pull with pet food companies on this one?
Well, and I mean, important things to understand. I mean, yeah, grease content is a huge one. Moisture. What it comes back down to from a packaging perspective is, what different types of barrier do you need to build in, and how long do they need to allow the package to work? So, over time, there's usually going to be some ingress of, say, moisture or oxygen or something like that. And so it's designing the package so that there's a small enough amount of that over the, agreed upon shelf life, that the product at the end of that shelf life still is, in the condition you want it to be. So that, I'd say, understanding the product so that we can design, barrier properties. So, and also, even in terms of how the filling process works. Some products need to be gas flushed, for example, to be able to change that level of residual oxygen inside the package. So different things like that do all play together, and it's important to have that all out in front of us as we discuss it.
Yeah, and I think maybe I would add to that a little bit, only because we're about to come out with a piece of data where we had diets that had a high amount of pulse ingredients in them and diets that had a large amount of grain ingredients in them. And indeed, the pulses are hygroscopic in contrast to the grains, and companies need to think about those qualities of those ingredients when they're just sitting in a bag, and understand and convey that to you so you can help them better choose the packaging that will maintain that shelf stability. So that was one of those aspects that I was looking at too, was the level of potential moisture. Everybody thinks about oxygen, but adding moisture to an extruded kibble does rapidly change that kibble from the original product that came off and was bagged. 18 months later, it could be something completely different if you choose the wrong packaging. Is that correct?
Yeah, and it's interesting how different some of those grease or fat levels, moisture levels, things like that are in what can look like to a consumer a very similar product. So making sure the packaging is designed to accommodate that.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I also wanted to talk maybe one thing. I'm a nutritionist, so obviously I go to sustainability and I go to protecting the product first. But I do have a background in industry, and I understand how important it is to think about how you're going to choose a bag that displays your branding in the way that you want. So can you talk a little bit there about what conversations you have, and what is important to consider when they're selecting a bag? And I'm going to assume here that they have data, and they're coming to you with data about what kind of shelf space that they have at different retailers, or whether they're direct to consumer was probably a completely different packaging conversation than on shelf. Could you talk us through some of those?
Sure. So, I mean, I think a big part of that is just, with pet food packaging, a lot of times it's a little bit larger package. I always think of like flat bottom quad bags, or box pouches is another word for them. They really have a nice shelf presence and a nice billboard for your graphics. So then it's things like, well, how are you printing? And so that's where we do a lot of high definition flexographic printing. You can really get nice imagery on the packaging. We can do different things, and in the industry can do different things around the surface finish. So whether you want a nice glossy package, or something that's more matte, or even a soft touch matte, or in some cases a combination. Maybe you want a matte overall package, but there's this one photographic element of it that you just really want to pop and be glossy, for example. You can do different thif like that. Having knowing how the package is going to be on the store shelf is important. So like sometimes, if a package might lay on its back, for example, the bottom or the side might contain the graphic panel that people actually are looking at on the store shelf. Picturing for a little bit larger fills probably, and so just making sure that that's designed to be as eye catching and have the right information on it, so people can see the brand they're looking for, and if there's other details that they want to put on there, that they can find them readily.
Yeah, there's already so much information on bags of dog food. It must be very challenging to do a lot of that graphic design. And I compliment those people that put that work into, because you can make the best food in the world, but if nobody buys it and nobody feeds it because they just couldn't see your package, that's a significant obstacle to be successful in the marketplace. So,
no, for sure.
So now I wanted to kind of move towards the consumer experience. So not the customer as the pet food company, but the consumer experience, because I talk quite a bit of this, especially to students or people who contact me personally for advice about how to handle pet food. And one of the first things I say is that it's really important to you when you have really good packaged food, you do not have to pour your kibble out into a big Tupperware or something like that. Can you talk about the customer experience and what pet food companies can do to make sure that those bags and the food within the bag remain in the bag as the primary source of storage? And maybe also talk to the fact if there's any packaging, I not for wet pouches, I don't think anybody transfers that. So this is probably more appropriate when we talk about kibble, but whether there's any kibble bags that you wouldn't want to keep the pet food in for the duration of its use.
All right, let me start working through those. So first, I agree with you, and I think from a brand perspective, it's wonderful for the person to actually store the product in the package, while it's all consumed. It's nice to keep that branding right there in the pantry or wherever it's being fed from. Yeah. I do think there's a preference, I guess, among consumers. I mean, some people are like, all right, we've got our bin that we're going to pour it in. We're going to come home every time. It doesn't really matter what the package looks like. We're going to dump it in there and put our lid on it, and that's how it's going to we'll dispense from there. I do think. Well, I know there are new reclose features and stuff like that. I think really being able to portion out a certain amount of it and then close it, keep it fresh, becomes an important thing. So, many of these formats you can add, a zipper is probably the most common type of reclose. There's different ways of doing the zipper that interact with the package differently. Some of them, I look at like a polywoven bag. It's challenging to put a reclose feature on that, for example. But if you look at like a large format plastic quad bag, you can certainly do that. And so, that's one of the values that type of format can offer versus like a multi-wall or a woven bag. And that's also why you probably see that as more of a premium package. You'll see premium brands in that type of package. And then the question is still, will the customer actually use it, or will they continue to put it in a different container? And really, I think there's just a lot of personal preference that's involved in that.
Out of curiosity, does the packaging industry pull for that data from customers, how they use the package? Does that research happen?
Yeah, I think it's very important to understand, how it's going to be used, so you can make sure that you design it so that, if people are using something in a certain way, you want to make it as easy as you can for them to use it that way. Versus having people be frustrated with the packaging. That's not good for the brands, for the packaging suppliers, for anybody, especially the customer.
Yeah, definitely. When I was working for Procter and Gamble, and I'm sure they still use the same phrase, they call that the first moment of truth. Is everybody, first moment of truth is looking at the packaging and making a decision, but then the use of the packaging is part of the subsequent moments of truth where people are deciding on how difficult it is, how easy it is. And our society certainly prefers to choose what is convenient and meets their expectations will be their number one choice category. So maybe on that note, what is your, can I ask this and you can say no, what is your highest selling bag to the pet food industry? I'm just wildly curious.
So again, it comes down to which part or which where's some of the higher volume. So it's probably for us. I mean, it's probably in dry kibble, and so it's going to be in the larger format bags. So whether it's polywoven bags or multi-wall paper bags are probably the highest unit volume ones. But there's like I said, there's different brands that like different packaging, and the growth is a little bit different in different formats. So it's where, like, again, kind of like our approach to sustainability, our approach to packaging formats is to try to be able to make sure that we're positioned to supply into the areas where we see growth and where there is volume, because sometimes those aren't quite the same.
And as you're going forward and ProAmpac continues to innovate packaging for not just the pet food industry, I know that you're also in the food industry. Mm-hmm. What can you share with us, any new and exciting things that are developing in the packaging industry that will have an impact on the pet food industry?
Well, I think there is kind of a conjoined overarching thing around sustainability. I mean, that's not just in pet food by any means. So that's really across a lot of the different markets that we serve. And what you might pick up in one area, we try to figure out, all right, how do we apply this in the other types of packaging that we do. I think there's also an opportunity to figure out, I don't quite want to call it smart packaging, but functional packaging. So are there new ways of incorporating barrier? Are there new technologies that you can build into a structure that might help with, oxygen scavenging, for example, interconnected packaging with new and cool things that you can do with the internet and being so it's everywhere. I mean, it's right here. Everybody's got their phone, but how can you make a package that has some element that can connect to the internet and can connect to some brands are using it to do like traceability for all the different components of their salad or something like that. How can you tie it back into a brand story? And there's some interesting new technology that we're working to bring to market, along those fronts as well.
Yeah, I think that transparency, that is a really interesting area to innovate, because as we move to trying to be as transparent about the choices that lay in front of the consumer to allow them to make the most informed decision that they choose, mm-hmm. understanding every component of that consumer good that they're buying is critically important. We don't need to make those decisions for them. We need to provide them the information to make the best decision for them, and we can't really understand everybody's tipping points on each one of those. So that's a really fascinating area of innovation, and glad to hear it. I can't wait to test out some of those things as you bring them to market. So before I go on to some kind of more off-topic packaging questions to close out, is there anything that you would like to add about what you do at ProAmpac and what ProAmpac can offer the pet food industry?
I guess I would say, we are excited to be where we're at in the pet food industry, to supply the pet food industry. I think we have very good technology. We've got very good operations, and we've got very good people. I think that's really critical, and we're all bound together by a common culture that's very strong within our company. So we are problem solvers. We are a lot of folks lately are saying we can be a packaging company, but we're also kind of a material science company that makes packaging. So we really enjoy figuring out, all right, what's the next challenge? What's the next obstacle to overcome, and how can we put our resources together to help find that solution?
Interesting. And you kind of lead into some of my softer questions, because I think I am now going to ask you about what type of culture you try to support within your company and maybe how you do that.
Sure. So, I mean, we have our culture. The idea is to be boundaryless. So each person should be empowered to do the things that they think we need to do to help one, be safe. That's priority number one, and two, to meet our customer goals and to help really be good. So I think that's really the overarching component of our culture, and there's a lot of other sub elements to it as well. But really trying to have all of us be a part of that common goal, and being able to work together, whichever functions might be, or however connections we might need to make to move forward as well as we can.
Excellent. So for the new professionals that are interested in coming into the packaging industry, we might have pet food people that are on the line that are going into the pet food industry. What would, if you could pick out one thing that you always look for in a new hire and one thing that would be a killer issue with a new hire, what would those two things be?
I would say, I guess the one thing I would look for would be curiosity. I try to be, and I want people around me that are also trying to understand, how is this used, or what is the next, problem to solve, or something like that. And I think having that curious mindset really allows you to grow, and allows you to help other people that are around you to grow as well.
Couldn't agree more with that one.
Oh, thank goodness. So
I do look for curiosity.
Okay.
So the detriment, much harder one to talk about.
Well, I mean, one would be a lack of curiosity. It's kind of a flip the switch kind of way to answer the question. But, I think from that perspective, you can be, if you don't have the open mind to try to learn more, it really keeps you closed. It's hard to grow. It's hard to be able to really make a contribution, and figuring out what that next contribution you can make to the company, to the industry, even is. So I think that's, I don't know, I'll just go both sides of the same issue on that one.
Yeah, I also tell students that part of the curiosity is also making sure that you show everybody that you're curious about what the experience is going to be going to work for that company. And I always ask the question in interviews at the end, do you have any questions for me? And the most terrifying answer is, no, I think I'm good.
Yes.
Really? Because you don't even know what you're getting yourself into. So you should be coming and advocating yourself, because once you're in that position, if you become miserable, the company's miserable, you're miserable. Nobody benefits from that.
Right. No, the curiosity should lead to questions, and I mean that's something that we teach within our company. Something I'm trying to teach my own kids. Figure out, all right, so if I'm kind of curious about this, how can I craft some questions around it? And how can you really ask those questions to keep people telling you more? People want to tell you lots of things, but sometimes you're not going to sit down in a conversation. Somebody's just going to spit it up at you. You need to ask these kinds of questions. And I think in an interview, it's super important when you're trying to understand, all right, what's life going to be like, in this new situation? How can this package work for your company? I mean, there's similar lines of thinking and questioning, I think, that really pervade all of those.
Yeah, absolutely. So once you have people inside your company, what is the best things that they can do to be successful? And once you're in a company, what is something that leads to failure?
All right. Well, I'd say to be successful, one, it's initially doing the things that you need to do in your role, and then figuring out, all right, how can I do this, in a way that really grows my visibility. And I think some of that can help, or the person's manager can help with also. How can I really shine a light on the work that this person's doing, and how can I help them correct if it needs to be done too. But when people are doing a great job, making sure that people elsewhere in the company can see that is important. And I think that really helps with their growth, whether it's continued growth within one portion of the organization, or whether it's growth as a person might be sought in a different part of the organization, and they get promotion opportunities based on people being able to see the level of effort and good work that they're trying to put in.
Is there something that an employee that you highly recommend an employee avoids to ensure that they don't fail?
I think not communicating and not being willing to rely on others to help you. I guess I mean that to help you, and not being willing to bring others along as you are doing your role in the company. I think those are both very detrimental. With the way the world works, I mean, you've got to rely on a team, and team's got to be able to rely on you. And if it doesn't work now, and I'm not sure if it really ever did, to just go in a corner somewhere and you do your thing. And yeah, there are some roles where that probably is helpful, but in an organization like ours, it really is much better to keep that socialization going, and just make sure people, are talking, know what you're doing, that you're helping them. That works out much better.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I mean, I teach fourth year undergrad, and everybody moans when they see how much group work I promote in these courses. And I constantly say, I have got to do group work. This is what you're going to be doing, whether you go into the industry, but if you're a manager and you end up being, say, a veterinary professional, you need to manage an entire team, and you need to learn how to motivate people if you're the leader. And these are really important soft skills that young people really need to invest some time in developing. Okay, last but not least, Ben.
If I can add really quick, I would say a lot of times your team expands beyond just the people that you're working with in the company. I mean, your customer set is an important part of teams that kind of come and evolve and stuff like that. And I think and it being able to understand enough about selling and enough about how to share the work that you're doing and the values of the products that you're having. I think that's also part of it too. But yeah, communication. Yeah. Teamwork, that stuff's all incredibly important right now.
Absolutely. Thanks for really firming that. And last but not least, cat versus dog. What team are you on?
Well, I think they're both wonderful. I think that's what you're supposed to say. From a very young age, I've been bred to be a dog person. So I guess I would land on the dog side of the equation, but I don't really have anything too much against cats though either.
Yeah, they're cool in a very different way. They're two very different beasts. You can love them both. And for our listeners, if they are not purchasing from ProAmpac and they want to have a discussion with you, how can they get a hold of you or others at ProAmpac that can start this discussion?
Yeah, I mean, best thing is to hit us on our website. So www.proampac.com. Pets.proampac.com is our specific pet related page, and there you'll see a whole summary of the products that we provide for that market. You'll see an overview of how we're approaching sustainability, our latest ESG reports published out there, and in the bottom corner of all of these is a contact button. And if you click that, it's going to go straight into the middle of the company, and you'll get a response back very, very quickly. So yeah, that's probably the best way. And we'd love to hear from you for sure.
Great. Well, with that, Ben, thank you very much for joining us today. I really enjoyed the discussion and learned a lot more about packaging. And have a fantastic weekend.
Well, thank you so much, Kate. It's been a pleasure.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.